At 3 a.m., I reached out, half asleep, searching for the warmth of my wife beside me. But the bed was cold, empty. My heart lurched as I sat up, scanning the dark room, my pulse quickening. Something felt off. Grabbing my phone, I dialed her number. The ringing felt endless, but then, finally, she answered. "Where are you?" "Do you even know what time it is?" I demanded. My voice edged with frustration and something deeper, fear. Her voice came through, slurred, dripping with alcohol. "Relax, sweetheart. We're just hanging out after the concert." A sharp pang of unease settled in my gut. But before I could respond, I heard it. Laughter. Male laughter. And then, clear as day, a voice in the background. "Dude, I have already satisfied her completely, so you don't need to worry." Time stopped. My grip tightened around the phone. Rage surging through me like wildfire, burning away every ounce of doubt I had left. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was betrayal in its purest, ugliest form. And in that moment, I vowed I would put an end to this madness once and for all. Betrayal doesn't happen overnight. It sneaks up on you, lurking in the shadows of what once felt unbreakable. As I sat there, phone still clutched in my trembling hand, my mind did what minds do when they're drowning in pain. It rewound. I remembered when I first met Emily. It was at a coffee shop on a rainy afternoon. I had taken shelter inside, shaken the water from my jacket when she bumped into me, spilling her caramel macchiato all over my shirt. She gasped, eyes wide with horror, and then she laughed. A light, musical sound that made me forget the mess. That moment, soaked in coffee and embarrassment, was the beginning of everything. We talked for hours that day, exchanging numbers before parting ways. The texts turned into calls, the calls into late-night drives, and before I knew it, I was falling. Hard. Emily had this way of making everything feel effortless, like we were two pieces of the same puzzle finally snapping into place. Our wedding was small but perfect. She walked down the aisle in a simple ivory dress, her eyes locked onto mine with a look of pure love. I had never been so sure of anything in my life as I was in that moment. I promised to cherish her, to love her through every storm, to be her rock. And for years, I believed she felt the same. But looking at my phone now, hearing another man's voice claiming to have satisfied my wife, I realized something gut-wrenching. The woman I fell in love with no longer existed. Or maybe, just maybe, she never did. Sitting there in the dark, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, I felt something inside me shift. This isn't real, this can't be real. But it was. And the worst part? The signs had been there, all along. I had just been too blind to see them. I thought back to the little things. The unexplained late nights at work. The way she used to be excited when I got home but had lately seemed distant. The way she flinched ever so slightly when I touched her, as if the warmth between us had slowly turned cold. Had it started a few months ago? A year? Longer? I had no way of knowing. My mind raced through memories, searching for clues, for a single moment where I could pinpoint when the love had died and deceit took its place. Then something hit me like a gut punch. Emily had stopped wearing her wedding ring. I remembered the first time I noticed. I had asked her about it teasingly. She had laughed it off, saying she kept forgetting to put it back on after doing the dishes. It seemed harmless at the time. But now it felt like a flashing neon sign I had been too much of a fool to read. And that wasn't all. There were text messages she quickly swiped away when I walked into the room. new lingerie that she never wore for me. The sudden urge to go to the gym when before, she couldn't care less. One excuse after another. And like an idiot, I had swallowed them all. But no more. No more denial. No more excuses. No more lies. I stood up, my heart hammering against my ribs as I made a decision. Tonight, I wouldn't sit back and wallow in betrayal. Tonight, I was going to find out just how deep this rabbit hole went. I couldn't sit still. The rage inside me demanded action. Every muscle in my body was tense, my mind spiraling between disbelief and fury. How long had she been lying to me? How many times had she done this? The thought made my stomach turn. I needed answers, and I needed them now. My fingers clenched around my phone as I stared at the call log. I could still hear the drunken slur in her voice, the way she had laughed so casually, as if she hadn't just ripped my heart out. And then, his voice. That arrogant, taunting voice that told me, without a shred of shame, that my wife had been with him. I swallowed the lump in my throat and did something I never thought I'd have to do. I opened our shared phone plan and pulled up her location. A blinking dot appeared on the screen, glowing mockingly. She wasn't at a concert venue. She wasn't at some bar. No, she was at a hotel, on the other side of town. That was it. That was all the confirmation I needed. I grabbed my car keys and stormed out of the house, barely registering the cold night air as I climbed into my car. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't even remember pulling out of the driveway. My mind was on autopilot, fueled by pure, seething betrayal. I had never thought of myself as a violent man. But in that moment, I understood how people snapped, how emotions took over and turned rational thought into blind action. The drive felt like a blur. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out the sound of the tires screeching against the pavement. I was on fire, rage consuming every part of me, leaving behind only one thought. I have to see it with my own eyes. I pulled into the parking lot of the hotel, my headlights illuminating the building like a stage before a grand performance. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself out of the car. Each step toward the entrance felt heavier than the last, but I refused to turn back. Inside, the receptionist barely glanced at me as I walked past. I already knew the room number. Emily had booked it using our joint credit card. Another mistake on her part? I reached the door and stopped. For a split second, doubt crept in. Did I really want to see this? Did I really want to face the truth head on? But then I heard it, a muffled giggle, her giggle, and his voice, low and smug. That was all it took. I raised my fist and pounded on the door, the sound echoing down the hallway. Silence. Then hurried whispers. Panic. And then, after what felt like an eternity, the door cracked open. Emily stood there in nothing but a hotel robe, her face draining of color the moment she saw me. My heart pounded in my chest. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, stood before me as a stranger. And behind her, in the dim light of the hotel room, I saw him. The man who had laughed in my ear. The man who had taken what wasn't his. He looked at me with a smirk, like he thought this was some kind of joke. Something inside me snapped. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war. The air in the dimly lit hotel hallway felt thick, almost suffocating. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words and bitter truths. Emily's eyes were wide, her lips slightly parted as if she wanted to say something, to explain, to lie, to beg. But nothing came out. Maybe she knew there was nothing she could say to undo this. Behind her, he stood there, smug, shirtless, and entirely too comfortable. My hands curled into fists at my sides. He was exactly what I expected. The kind of guy who thought he was untouchable, who had no remorse, no shame. The kind of guy who could sleep with another man's wife and then laugh about it. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at her. My wife. The woman who had promised me forever. "Aren't you going to say something?" I finally asked, my voice eerily calm. Emily swallowed hard, her hands clutching the robe tightly around her body, as if she could hide the truth that was already out in the open. I can explain," she stammered. I let out a hollow laugh. "Explain? How do you explain this?" "Save it," I snapped, stepping past her into the room without waiting for permission. The smell of cheap wine and expensive cologne filled the air. A bottle of champagne sat half empty on the nightstand. Clothes, hers and his, were scattered across the floor. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't something that just happened. This was deliberate, planned. I turned to face him, my blood boiling. "You think this is funny?" The bastard smirked, crossing his arms. "I don't see the big deal, man. She was going to leave you anyway. Why drag it out? Leave me." I glanced at Emily, but she looked away, guilt flashing across her face. That was all I needed to hear. I took a slow step forward, my voice dropping into a deadly whisper. "You need to leave." His smirk faltered for the first time. He glanced at Emily as if expecting her to stop me, but she said nothing. "Good. I don't take orders from—" I didn't let him finish. Before he could get another word out, my fist connected with his jaw. Hard. The satisfying crack of bone against bone filled the room as he stumbled back, knocking over the bedside lamp. He groaned, clutching his face, his cocky attitude vanishing in an instant. Emily screamed, "Stop it!" But I wasn't listening. The rage I had been suppressing for God knows how long finally broke free. "You slept with my wife, laughed in my face about it, and you think I'm just going to walk away?" My voice was dangerously low, shaking with fury. He scrambled to his feet, holding up his hands. "Look, man, Get out," I growled. "Now." This time, he didn't argue. He grabbed his clothes off the floor and bolted for the door, still holding his jaw. Good. He deserved worse. As the door slammed shut behind him, I turned back to Emily. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. Not sadness, not regret, just cold, hard certainty. "Pack your things," I said flatly. "We're done." Her breath hitched. "Wait, please, just let me explain." I said, "We're done." For years, I had been a loving husband, a patient man, a fool. But tonight, I was something else entirely. Emily stood frozen, her face a mess of tears, but I didn't care. Not anymore. "Please just listen," she pleaded, reaching for me. "It's not what you think." I took a step back, my voice colder than I ever thought it could be. "It's exactly what I think, and I'm done." Her breath shuddered as she gripped the robe tighter around her. I could see the panic setting in, the realization that she had finally pushed me too far. I didn't give her another glance. I walked to the small hotel closet, yanked it open, and grabbed her purse. Tossing it onto the bed, I said, "Get dressed. Pack your things. You're coming home so you can leave for good." She hesitated, her lip trembling. "Where am I supposed to go?" she whispered. I let out a dry chuckle. "Maybe your boyfriend can help you with that." The reality of her situation finally sank in. She had just lost everything. I didn't wait for her. I turned and walked out of the hotel room, my hands still shaking, my mind racing. But I wasn't just angry anymore. I was calculating. This wasn't going to end with a simple breakup. No. Emily needed to feel every ounce of the betrayal she had put me through. She needed to watch everything she had taken for granted crumble around her, and I knew exactly where to start. By the time we got home, the silence between us was suffocating. Emily sat in the passenger seat, wiping away silent tears while I stared straight ahead, my mind already working through my next move. The first thing I did when we walked inside, I grabbed my laptop. "What are you doing?" Emily asked hesitantly, standing near the doorway like a lost child. "Telling the truth." I logged into our shared accounts, the same ones she clearly thought I was too stupid to check, and started pulling everything I needed. Phone records, hotel receipts, text message backups, photos. She must have realized what I was doing because she lunged forward, trying to snatch my laptop away. "No, you can't." I stepped back, raising a hand. "Touch me, and I swear to God you'll regret it." She froze. For years, I had been the forgiving husband, the man who let things slide, the one who put her needs before mine. That man was dead. She took a shaky breath. "Please, let's just talk about this." I ignored her and typed faster. Within minutes, I had compiled everything into a single devastating email, sent to her family, her best friends, and most importantly, her boss. Because here's the thing. Emily worked for a company that prided itself on its values, a company that didn't tolerate scandal. And wouldn't you know it, her boyfriend just so happened to be one of her superiors. The moment I pressed send, Emily let out a choked sob. "Oh my God, what did you do?" I looked at her with pure indifference. "I made sure everyone knows exactly who you are." Emily was panicking now, pacing back and forth, gripping her hair. "You don't understand," she cried. "If my boss finds out—" "Oh, he'll find out," I said calmly. "Along with HR. Pretty sure workplace affairs aren't part of your company policy, right?" Her knees buckled and she sank onto the couch. "Please, you don't have to do this." I tilted my head. "You didn't have to cheat. But here we are." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. But I wasn't done. I walked over to the safe in our bedroom, entered the code, and pulled out the one thing she had forgotten about: our prenup. I tossed it onto the table in front of her. "Hope you weren't expecting a payday out of this, sweetheart. You leave with exactly what you brought into this marriage. Nothing." She looked up, her face streaked with tears. "You're divorcing me?" I leaned in, my voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, I'm doing a lot more than that." I grabbed my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and hit dial. Ring. Ring. "Hello?" "Hey, Tom. I'm sorry to call so late, but I need a favor." Tom was my lawyer, one of the best. And by the time I was finished, Emily wouldn't just be losing her job. She'd be losing everything. And I was going to enjoy every second of it. Emily sat on the couch, her face pale, her breathing uneven. I could see the gears in her mind turning, desperately trying to figure out a way to undo the damage. But there was no undoing this. I leaned against the counter, watching as she picked up the prenup with trembling hands. I could see the panic setting in. She thought she had time. Time to secure her position, time to manipulate me, time to figure out her exit strategy. She was wrong. This isn't fair," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I let out a cold laugh. Fair. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you snuck around behind my back? When you let another man disrespect me in my own marriage? When you laughed about it? She flinched. Good. I picked up my phone again. Oh, and just so you know, Tom's filing for divorce first thing in the morning. He's already drafted the paperwork. No settlement, no alimony, nothing. The house? In my name. The car? Mine. Your bank account? You might want to check that. Her head snapped up. I gestured toward her phone. Hesitantly, she picked it up and opened her banking app. Within seconds, her face twisted in horror. What the hell? She gasped. Oh, right, I said, feigning realization. Forgot to mention, I moved all the joint account money into my personal one. Since, I was the one who earned it. Guess you'll have to see if your boyfriend is willing to cover your expenses now. Her hands were shaking. I can't believe you'd do this to me. I scoffed. No, Emily, I can't believe you did this to yourself. Her phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. Emily, call me now. HR just emailed me. We're in serious trouble. Her eyes widened as she read it. Oh, yeah, the fallout was already beginning. I didn't need to watch her suffer. I already knew how this would play out. By morning, she'd lose her job. By the end of the week, her boyfriend would be out too, fired for workplace misconduct. By the time the divorce was finalized, she'd be broke, unemployed, and utterly alone. And I would walk away, free. But I wasn't quite done yet. You should probably start packing, I said, standing up. I'll be nice. I'll give you 2 days. After that, you're out. She stared at me, speechless. The woman who once thought she could have everything, her stable marriage, her exciting affair, her double life, was now left with nothing. I walked toward the door, pausing just long enough to glance back at her. I loved you, Emily, I really did. My voice was calm, even. But now, I just feel sorry for you. And with that, I walked out, closing the door on her and on us for good. In the days that followed, I watched the chaos unfold like a well-orchestrated performance. Emily's affair was now public knowledge, her reputation shattered. Friends who once admired her now whispered behind her back. Even her own family was disgusted. Her job, gone. Fired for violating workplace policies. The man she risked everything for, he wasn't much better off. With HR involved, he lost his position too. And from what I heard, his wife, yes, he was married, took everything in the divorce. As for me, I thrived. The divorce was swift and painless for me. I kept the house, my finances, and my dignity. I even took some time off, traveled a bit, and focused on myself. One night, weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. I miss you. Please, can we just talk? I didn't reply. I simply blocked the number and moved on. Because my story wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about victory. And damn, did it feel good?